Carol, what color am I wearing?
Green.
And just not any green, spring green, as the Crayola crayons would label it. You want to know why?
Because in spite of the weather, you are done with winter colors.
I am done. You know me so well. Let's get started on this week's episode. Spring is coming.
So they say. Welcome to the Gardenangelist, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana, where I have a suburban garden measured in square feet. It's about a third of an acre.
And I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I garden on an acre and a half out of 7.5 acres in the country.
We call ourselves Gardenangelists because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening and we want others to love it too.
Yes, we do. And we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But that's enough of who, what, when, where. Let's move on to this week's episode. Okay, I had to cough because all of a sudden I couldn't breathe. You can see Bill in the background walking very quietly through the kitchen. He's waving.
Yeah.
You know why?
Why?
Those stupid Juniperus virginiana, otherwise known as Eastern red cedars, are yellow with pollen. And it blew crazy yesterday here because that front that brought you snow.
Yeah.
It brought us Eastern red cedar pollen and a bunch of cold weather. So we're all dying in Oklahoma right now. How are you guys?
We're good. And you did mention snow. We got, and I don't know, I completely missed the forecast. I wasn't paying attention. Went out to lunch with some friends yesterday, came out and they're like, oh, it's snowing. And then I think we got 4 or 5 inches, enough that they plowed the street. And I'm like, oh, I was going to go out this morning and shovel the driveway. And I thought, you know what? South facing driveway, it's not above freezing. But if the sun comes out like it's out now, that's less I have to shovel. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to wait until later this afternoon. And then if it needs to be shoveled, because it's surely going to melt by Wednesday, it's 61. Anyway.
So it's going to get super cold. I mean, it is super cold today. It's 25 degrees here right now. And we're recording this on a Saturday. How cold is it there?
Well, I just looked on my watch, which sometimes isn't up to date. And I'm like, what? What? It says it's 16 out there. It's about 6. I didn't even,
I bet it is. But next week, you're going to be in the 60s. I'm going to be in the 70s. So what did you do in your garden before this all started?
So I did cut back the rest of my epimediums in the back, and I went up to the front entrance where I had left Mom's all winter long, and I knew that bugged some residents. Like, when's she going to get out of there? It's like, oh, this is volunteer work whenever I want.
Yeah.
So I took him out on Monday because we had an HOA meeting on Tuesday. Nobody complained. And can I complain for a minute?
Yeah, you go right ahead.
So I'm the secretary of the garden club. So I'd take minutes on Monday for garden club, got those out the door Tuesday morning, and then went to the HOA meeting. And I'm just a member at large. They keep me on the board because I know stuff about trees and shrubs and flowers. But the secretary wasn't there, and so I took minutes again. Had those out the door. Anyway, I'm not complaining.
Minutes. I was always the secretary.
Anyway, I also ate a bunch of microgreens, did a little inventory of what was blooming for Garden Bloggers Bloom Day. All that is now covered by snow. People can look at my post. We just got an email. D. Anyway, people can look at my post to see what was blooming before it got snow dumped on it. And yes, everything is going to be fine. We got an email from a listener, Poppy, who wants some basic information about microgreens. I will include some information in the newsletter, some links to, I'm sure I can link to the Family Handyman article I wrote, and probably I could link to something on my blog. And then I went to the Rural King, got some Scarlet Runner beans. Bought 2 packs so I could give one away in May when I talk about lost ladies at the local master gardeners. And, went to another garden center, got some carrot seeds, went to Tractor Supply. They didn't have their seeds out really. The guy says, we're going to get them out on Friday. I'm like, okay. And then in the front, they've got the bare root roses and fruit trees. And I'm like, it's kind of early for those. But anyway,
no,
I digress on that. I've got my Scarlet Runner bean seeds. Yay.
Good job. Good job.
How about you?
I chopped all of my smoke trees back in half that run along that wall, the retaining wall on the east side of my house, down by the bedrooms. And I want them to be bushier and less smoke. So I chopped them way back. I also chopped back all of my roses of Sharon, which used to be Altheas, but now they are hibiscus, according to, the powers that be. And they had gotten really tall because I have both purple pillar and sugar tip, which are proven winners plants that were sent to me years ago. I still love sugar tip. I like purple pillar just fine, but it grows really tall. And so they were so tall I couldn't see the flowers last year. And I sowed a bunch of seeds for flowers in my greenhouse. I got all of my cherry tomato seeds to do all my sweet cherry tomatoes. I don't
Lovely.
know if I've talked about that on here, but I did write a blog post about it. And let's see, the flowers. Okay, so people are going to go, Dee's already sowing flowers? Well, there's certain ones that take forever, like Lysianthus. And I mean, it takes forever. Like I should have sowed it back in December, but I didn't. But Jennifer from Ladybug brought me some that are already up, but I just wanted to see if I could grow up from seed because I've never done it. I also sowed some nasturtiums, two kinds, and hollyhocks. And I did a reel on Instagram about seed sowing, including those trays that I love so much. So I wrote a couple of blog posts and I did all kinds of stuff this week. I was busy.
Cool. I was going to say my winter sown gallon containers out there are completely covered with snow, which is fine. I
Yeah,
did
it's
look in
insulating.
them. I looked in them, I think Thursday, and one of the alliums had started to germinate. So,
Which we're going to talk about alyssum in a minute.
yes, we are.
What's your favorite this week?
My favorite is I'm going to go with when I was out looking for blooms, I remembered that the little iris histrioides, that's a hard one to say, Lady Beatrix Stanley, is always the very first one to bloom. I know exactly where it is out in the garden. And so I went out there and there was one bud and I compared it to last year. Last year where there were several blooming. This year there was just one bud. And that bud is of course now buried in snow, but that was my favorite before the snow fell.
So none of my little iris reticulatas or my histrioides, which they look very similar, are blooming, but their cute little spiky leaves are up. And they're right outside this door where we record in the kitchen so that I can see them. And that's a place where I don't do a lot of work because they're planted so shallowly that it's really easy to knock them out of the
It
area.
is.
So I try not to do a lot of heavy duty weeding under those. I have sunshine ligustrum there, and I pretty much just keep layering a little bit of mulch on top just to keep them alive. You know what I mean? Year to year.
I do.
So far that's working, and I'm giving all these details because a lot of people say they can't grow them here. Well, I think they're just drubbing them out because I used to do that too. So you want to hear my little favorite?
I do.
So, as part of a mix last year, and I'll have to go look at the mix in the fall, I planted these orange pansies. And they're different. They're different from any orange pansy. And in fact, before, when I was updating my notes this morning, I went looking for them online and I can't find them. They are so cute. They are ruffled and they're a bicolor orange pansy. They're not orange blotch. They don't have a central dark, little center. I have some of those. They're just kind of yellow and orange, and they're very ruffled and they're just beautiful. And if I can get a photo, I will try. It depends on, it's 25, so it may not happen, but they're very brave little flowers.
They are. Now, can I back up to your roses of Sharon?
Yes.
So you named a couple of varieties that you have. I think it's really important for people to buy varieties that are mostly sterile, that don't produce viable seed. Otherwise, you will have those everywhere. And I'm thinking about my nephew who bought a house last fall. And when I went over there, my sister and I were assessing the yard, and there are roses of Sharon everywhere. And I'm like, he really needs to have all these taken out, or he needs to take them out. It's just ridiculous. So do buy the newer varieties that are sterile. Don't dig up a bunch of seedlings, or you'll have a bunch of seedlings to dig up for the rest of your life.
Because if you buy the ones that have the very open flowers, they have a long central can't think of what the word is, but basically bees love them and they will pollinate the heck out of them. And yes, they can become extremely aggressive and perhaps invasive. Purple pillar is sterile. I'm just sure of it because I've never seen any of them and it's a newer variety. And then sugar tip is my favorite one and it has variegated leaves that are green and white, which hence the name sugar tip. Don't try to say that fast 3 times. And it has double light pink blooms with a burgundy center.
Sounds pretty.
It is a very, in fact, I can do a picture of it because I've got dozens of
Okay.
it. So that's very good advice because, when we were talking about butterfly bushes a couple of weeks ago, same thing. You want new varieties that don't produce seed.
Yeah, I'm making a note of all these pictures you have to send me. Orange pansies.
If I have one. I don't know if I'll have one.
Roses of Sharon.
Yeah, I have both of those.
All right. That'll be good for now. I'll keep making notes. Let's do a quote, talk about our flower topic. In some native languages, the term for plants translate to those who take care of us. And that is from Robin Wall Kimmerer from Braiding Sweetgrass. Plants take care of us.
It's an amazing, amazing book.
It is.
It's deep. It's very deep. And we heard Robin speak. At least I think you were there with me.
Yes, that was in Buffalo, New York. She spoke to the garden communicators. Very moving topics. She was real, very good speech. I wouldn't call it a speech. I'd just call it a conversation.
Yeah, and storytelling.
Yes,
she's a storyteller. Yeah, she's wonderful. All right, flowers. We decided to do fragrant flowers from seed because I got an email and it was from John Sheeper's Kitchen Garden Seeds, which is the same company that does bulbs, but they do it under John Sheeper's bulbs. So I thought it was a really good article and they've been doing a lot of these that are good. And so there are a lot of different fragrant flowers that you can grow from seed. And I think fragrant flowers add so much to a garden.
They help you remember the garden.
They sure do in winter, for sure. So what you were going to say, the ones you grow, I was going to say the ones I grow. And I kind of looked at their list too.
So on their list, I'm growing sweet alyssum, and normally I buy plants at the garden center or at the local greenhouse. And the thing about alyssum is they get so floppy in the flats so fast.
Yeah.
So I decided to start some from seed, and those are winter sown right now, but I like to put those along the edges of my vegetable garden beds, and in my garden at least, they'll make it through the summer heat. No, a lot of places they'll kind of die out in the summer heat, and then a brand new flush of growth in the fall. So they're like an all-season plant for me. Tiny, tiny seeds.
So yeah, they do. They have very tiny seeds. So here in Oklahoma, they're really a spring plant. Usually you can't get them to over summer. It just depends on what kind of weather we have. But like last year, we had such a long spring that the alyssum lasted a very long time. And it comes in purple and it comes in white. And I kind of like the white. Do you like the white or the purple?
I like both.
Uh-huh.
And I'm growing both.
So your next one was sweet peas. Did you direct sow those or did you winter sow them?
Sweet peas. No, I'm going to direct sow those, and it is not time to do that.
Oh, I already did mine because it is time.
Yeah.
I forget sometimes you're a month behind me.
I am. And remember, I had that old sweet pea book. I sent that to Matt Mattis, and he loves it because he grows sweet peas. So people should go follow him on Instagram. He's already read the book and put a bunch of information out there. But one of the things that he said, according to that book, and more people are realizing, you do not have to soak the sweet pea seeds before sowing them.
You don't have to, but I've noticed they germinate better for me here. I think because my soil can be so dry.
That could be.
It's a different world here. So I soak them and I've had much better success. So the next one you listed was Nicotiana.
Well, wait a minute. I want to say one thing about sweet peas.
Okay.
I want to say one more thing about sweet peas. There is a perennial sweet pea. Don't get it. It has no scent, and it'll become a bane of your existence in your garden because that will come up everywhere. Don't ask me how I know.
I saw it in somebody's garden last year. Oh my gosh.
It's horrible.
It is horrible. Okay, so can we move on to Nicotiana?
Yeah, we're both growing Nicotiana.
Yes, we are. Which one are you growing? Do you know?
The one that just self-sows itself in my vegetable garden and just comes up in the spring.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's just the white one.
There's several white ones, but okay. You're probably,
Just
yeah.
the basic. What do you growing all the fancy ones?
I have grown all the fancy ones. Of the fancy ones, I like only the lonely, which is a big white one. It's just a cultivated variety of the one you're talking about. It does have really great scent. And let's see, I don't like the cranberry aisles one at all. It's short and stupid. There's no reason to have a short, stupid one it didn't have any scent in my garden. I really love the lavender cloud mix from Hudson Valley Seed. It's the only place you can get it. It's wonderful, and it stopped people in their tracks the year I grew it. So this year I'm growing only the lonely. So talk about stock.
So remember last year I had never really grown stock, and I, just kind of ignored it at the garden center. But I got seeds, and my infamous 11-cent packets had tons of stock seedlings. They did bloom. They had an okay scent, but they summered over and produced seed pods. So I collected all that seed, and now I've winter sown a bunch of it. And I still have tons of that seed. So I'll probably sow some on a little flat inside just to see what happens, but we'll see.
I've sown them inside. I've planted them out in place. I've done lots of different things with stock. I like stock in my vegetable garden. I don't know why. I mean, I think I just like the scent. It's kind of a clove scent to me. Scent is very personal. So sometimes what something smells like to me might not smell like that to someone else, but they're not hard to grow. They like cool weather. So we lose them we lose them in the summertime. But see, my theory on that is that just gives you space to plant something else.
That's right. Now, stock it's a good one for the vegetable garden. It is in the cabbage family.
Maybe that's why I like it there. That's a
Could
good,
be.
thank you, Carol. So in my garden, for the first time this year, I'm going to grow mignonette, which I think I bought from John Sheeper's Kitchen Seeds. I don't know why. I read on the packet that I'm supposed to sow it directly. So I'm going to sow it directly. And then I love heliotrope. I usually start that indoors about now, and it'll go all summer long. And I've grown every type of heliotrope there is. To this year, I'm growing marine. I don't know why. It's dark purple, I guess. I've grown the white one. They all smell good. There's one that's got an really almondy scent. I'm going to grow sweet peas. I'm growing Nicotiana again because I always grow it. Again, only the lonely is one of the most fragrant ones. I also grow 4 o'clocks, which I have salmon sunset, and I think it's for sale on Kitchen Garden Seeds. It's also on sale at rareseeds.com, Baker Creek. They have it. That's where I first got it. You can save seeds from that 4 o'clock because it's open pollinated, and you'll just have it forever. And mine actually drops seed, and I've given seed to people. But here's the thing. Some of mine is reverting back to the pink. And I like Salmon Sunset because it's orange with a pink center. So I've been pulling out the pink ones. Not that they're bad. I just want Salmon Sunset.
And again, let me say this. If you plant 4 o'clocks and let the seed drop, you will have 4 o'clocks forever.
Forever.
And I call them window well flowers.
Why?
Because when I was a kid, there were 2 window wells for the basement windows. And for whatever reason, the seed dropped in there and 4 o'clocks came up, and my dad just left them. And so 4 o'clocks grew in the wintertime in our window wells in the back.
Cool. Well, one of the things I wanted to mention about this is that a lot of these plants that I mentioned, they are more fragrant in the evening. And there's a reason for that. They're trying to attract pollinators and primarily moths. And so a lot of them are white, and a lot of them are fragrant in the evenings. And if you want to have white-lined sphinx moths or hummingbird clearwing moths, you can plant these plants. They all like the trumpet-shaped flowers. And actually, those 2 moths are active during the day. And they also like phlox of all types, but especially Phlox paniculata. But usually that's not grown from seed. I'm not saying you can't, but most people just divide it and give it to each other or buy plants.
let me say this to wrap up this flower topic.
Hmm.
A lot of people only buy plants. They don't mess around with seeds. They're missing out on a great opportunity to get a lot of lovely scented plants, annuals mostly, from seed. And like we said, some of these they'll just keep returning in your garden, which is kind of a nice thing
Oh, and I
sometimes.
want to say one more thing too, building upon what you said. If you only buy plants that you buy at wherever, those are highly hybridized plants. And a lot of times they've lost their scent. So that's another reason
Yes.
to grow from seed. Most scented
Heirloom
plants
varieties.
are heirlooms, almost all of them, or named plants that are older. So that's something to remember. And, add a rose in there too, but get roses that have some scent.
Yes. Now do that quote and let's talk about vegetables.
The ache for home lives in all of us, the safe place where we can go as we are and not be questioned. That's Maya Angelou, and it's from her book, All God's Children Need Traveling Shoes. I love that title.
That is a good title.
So, our vegetable topic is onions and other alliums.
We promised last week we were going to talk about onions and other alliums, and here we are, Dee. Here we
Here we
are.
are. So, seeds or sets?
Well, I used to be a sets girl, but I'm now convinced that seeds is a better way to grow a lot of onions, especially bunching onions. I had great success with seed grown, and you can get more varieties if you get the seeds versus if you go out and buy sets, you're looking at red, yellow, white.
Yes. And sometimes sweet onions here in the South, because now you can get a few varieties of the sweets. But they are not easy. If you want unusual things, you're going to have to grow them from seed. And Matt Mattis is convinced, and he kind of convinced us in his vegetable book, that you should grow them from seed. So here's the thing. I have done this two ways. I have actually sown seed directly into my garden. And what I like about that is that I get green onions in the middle of summer,
Yep.
which is wonderful because usually your green onions are long done. And then the other thing is you can start some of them indoors and then set them out, and you can get onions, really good onions in summer. So you can do it both ways that way. I will admit that I did buy not sets, but actually grown onions, little green
Right.
onions. I bought some of those from my local, I think it was from TLC nursery locally, because they had some sweets, and I like sweet onions really much, much, much. So I planted out a bunch of those, and they were so cheap. I had so many that I still have some in a bag sitting right next to my desk because I don't really know what to do with them. And I used my new dibber
Uh
that
huh.
my friend 3D printed for me, and bless her heart, that thing works great.
Cool.
So, what do you think about onions?
So the thing I would say about onions is I used to just plant the sets and then I would pull them early and treat those as green onions. But I much prefer now to grow like Tokyo long white and white Lisbon, which I'm growing as bunching onions.
Uh huh.
They won't form bulbs. I think they make a better tasting green onion. So there's that. And then onions aren't the most attractive crop out in the garden. They start to die back and they just kind of in the middle of the summer there you have all that stuff just dying back, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
And to harvest them, you kind of wait until the tops die back and then you want to carefully lift them out because a bruised onion will rot pretty quick. And so you don't want to have bruising because that'll cause them to rot really quick. And then you want to lay them out to dry and then carefully wash them off, then lay them out to dry so that you can keep them. And they'll keep a long time.
And you don't want to let them bloom. They're really bad to bloom here. So
Yeah.
when they try to bloom, when they send up that center stalk or try to, I break it and take it off or lay it on its side. Usually I just lay it on its side really early because I don't want them to put all of their production into the seed. They're bad to do that here. So I didn't know that scallions were another name for bunching onions.
Yeah. Basically, it's a green
Mm.
onion. So
Yeah, it is. We just call them scallions or green onions, but I just didn't think about it. And then shallots. Have you grown shallots? I have.
I have not, but I've gotten seeds for cream brulee from All America Selections, which is a shallot And shallots are basically much milder in taste, and they're
Yeah.
what's called a multiplier. So, like garlic, you plant, well, the garlic, you plant cloves, but with shallots, you plant one bulb or one seedling, and then it multiplies, and you'll get several bulbs to harvest from
Yeah,
that one.
they come out as a big kind of a, well, almost like a garlic bulb, but yes,
Yeah,
like
they're
that.
a multiplier.
But you don't treat them like garlic when you cook with them. So they're good. They're wonderful, and I've grown them several times. They're really good. So you said that leeks, you think that if you grow onions, you can grow leeks. Well, here's the thing. Maybe in your climate. In my climate, I tried to grow leeks last year and I've tried to grow them before. I have yet to successfully grow leeks. I'm not saying that you can't do it, but I think you need here to plant them early in the fall in a place that is covered so they don't get too cold, right? So, like a cold
Mm-hmm.
frame. And then I would definitely put, it's just really complicated. So, I think I would want to buy the seed in the fall, sow the seeds indoors. Then, because I tried doing it in the spring, it didn't work. It got too warm and they just never did a thing. They just sat there. Maybe if they had sat there all the way until winter, it might have worked, but I just don't have time for that. That is a long crop.
Yes, and I'm going to link to an extension article from University of Wisconsin because I've never really grown leeks, and my assumption is they would be something you could grow. I do know you can leave them in the garden after frost and they'll be fine, and you
Yeah,
can
like
harvest
carrots.
them. Yeah, so but I can't really speak to them because I
They're
neither
hard.
grow them or use them that much.
I think it would be easier in Wisconsin or someplace that is in that's like out west, like in the Pacific Northwest. Any place that's like England, they grow leeks really successfully in England. So let's talk about garlic. You didn't really want to talk about garlic because it's in the fall is when you plant it. Um,
Yes.
but you know what? It's an allium, so we should talk about it, I guess.
Well, and
Yes.
here's my challenge for you. We've talked about garlic extensively on some old episode out there. So
Mm.
you have to use your sleuthing skills and find that episode for me so
Okay.
I can link it in the newsletter.
But quickly, it's a multiplier. You break open the bulb and you plant each clove, and each clove will make a bulb. And
That's right.
so it is not hard to grow. It does like fertilization. So my garlic is up. It's tiny, but it's up. And I will start fertilizing it as soon as the weather warms, like consistently. I will lay in some chicken manure because I no longer use cow manure. I will lay in some chicken manure that is highly composted and feed it. It likes food. So that's, and then when do you harvest it? Well, you harvest it when it starts to send up scapes and is done. And
When
people
it's
collect those garlic scapes and actually they fry them up, not fry, saute them and eat them. They're a
yes,
delicacy.
yes. I know I'm going to say when like the first you'll notice that like there's sets of leaves that come up from the garlic, and when the lower sets start to turn brown, that's when you harvest it. And then
Let it
the other
dry.
question, let it dry. The other question people ask is hard neck versus soft neck. And my rule of thumb is generally, and it could be completely wrong, but this is what I think. Hard necks are more hardy. And so that's like when you have true winners, like I usually have, you grow hard necks. And soft necks, I think of, growing in places like Italy
Louisiana.
or California or Louisiana. So
I can grow both in Oklahoma, but here's the thing. I tend to grow hardneck because you can buy softneck at the store. You can buy organic softneck at the store all day long. Hardneck is much harder to find. And last year I had the best garlic harvest I ever had, bar none. And it's the hardneck that sends up the garlic scapes. I don't think softneck does, but somebody, if I said that wrong, just, let it go. What else do I want to say? Hardneck does not stay, what's the word? Soft neck stays longer in keeping than hard neck does. So if you grow both of them, use your hard neck garlic first. And I tend to like the purple ones. And one more thing about cooking with hard neck garlic is much easier to separate those cloves and get that papery skin off. It comes off much, much easier than on soft neck. Okay,
yeah.
that's
And
enough of
that
that. Whew.
it is enough. All the onion talk it is almost time, I think. I need to double check. I might go ahead and start some onion seeds out indoors, like for the first crop I'm going to put out there. And then I'll probably wait another few weeks and plant some more for like a subsequent of the bunching, especially.
Yeah, I
And
would start them
then,
here now if you're going to do it by seed.
and I realized that I wanted to grow red onions and I don't have any seeds for that. So I got
I
to go
have some
back and
red
buy.
onions right here you could have.
No, I got to go get some seeds. Anyway, I'll do a quote. We'll go to the bookshelf. Nothing is sweeter than to think well of others. Saint Therese of Lisieux.
Okay, on our bookshelf, this one was sent to us for review.
Yes. The Backyard Homestead Guide to Growing Organic Food, a crop by crop reference for 62 vegetables, fruits, nuts, and herbs by Tanya Dekla Cobb. And this is from our friends at Story Publishing. And when they say reference, Dee,
That's the key
they mean
word.
reference. This is not a book of pictures at all.
No,
And
there's no
so,
picture in here.
but there's a few line diagrams every once in a while.
It's
But
not a picture, Carol. Just
no, it's
saying.
not. So here's the chapters: creating a self-sustaining gardening, and that's full of good information about the basics, considering raised beds, on composting. There's some good basic information on there. Good soil makes a difference. And then there's chapters on vegetables, fruits and nuts, herbs. Then there's some organic remedies for some of the issues that you might have out in the garden. And then there's also allies and companions. And she talks about things that you can plant together and what they do for it. And her definition, I hadn't really thought about this. Allies are said to actively repel insects or to enhance the growth or flavor of the plant they help. Companions, by contrast, are said to share space and growing habits well, but do not necessarily play an active role in each other's pest protection or growth. Allies can be and are considered companions, but companions are not necessarily allies.
I remember this from that book about, it was published by Cool Springs Press.
You mean
By our
Jessica
friend.
Walliser's?
Yes, her book. She talked about that in there. And that was the first time I ever heard it. Here's something I've never heard of that's in this book ever. You ready?
What's that?
If you want to get rid of weeds, till them in the dark. Have you heard that? This is from
No.
this is from a university deal. All right, tilling in the dark may cut some weed problems in half, according to research from the USDA in Rosemount, Minnesota. Seeds of certain weed species need a flash of light to break dormancy, and tilling in the dark prevents this. This approach is recommended for those with good night vision. Only for those with good night vision. Yeah, you don't want to hoe off your foot. But what an
No.
interesting, I have never, ever, ever heard that.
No, that's new on me. So this does not cover every vegetable, every fruit, and every nut. For example,
No.
I was looking for information about leeks, and I thought, well, I'll just look in this book. And it is not in there per se, and I didn't even see it in the index. But that's no takeaway from this book. This is actually a darn good reference, Dee. It's got, if you wanted to have a book and that you could just like, hey, for the first time ever, and I just turn randomly to Caraway. She's got the information, and they show what kind of site it needs, temperature for germination, for growth, soil and water needs. And then she's got first seed starting date, last seed starting date. And it's kind of based on, you have to figure out what that means for your climate. Measurements, spacing, lots of good info.
I think the reason that you should have it on your bookshelf, and I'm going to keep it on mine, is the whole section about organic remedies, because she knows what she's talking about. And I get asked these questions all the time now by people about different things to do when, for controlling disease and controlling insects and pests. And these are all organic methods, and they're modern organic methods.
Yeah.
Because we know more scientifically about what to do than what we used to. And so she has all kinds of stuff, like stuff on southern blight, smut. It's all alphabetized, so that makes it easier to get. And then over here, it's a guide to controlling insects and animals. Do you know how many questions I get on deer control? This would be
one.
And moles. Right now, I have moles right now, which I wrote the articles on moles and voles and everything for Family Handyman. So organic remedies for moles is traps, according to this. Oh, and planting castor bean plants. Yeah, that would help. Wear gloves to prevent human scent. There's some interesting ideas in here. So I like this book.
Well, one of the ideas that I thought was kind of interesting was black light traps certain insects. And she says use experimentally, but you remember when I don't know if when you're a kid to get a black light and then it was weird to see stuff under the black light.
Yes, I'm familiar with black lights, Carol. I'm not that much younger than you are.
Anyway,
they were kind of in style when we were teenagers.
So a black light trap to trap like leafhoppers and different insects. So that, I mean, just going through there, even if you don't have those problems and reading through that, it'd probably come up with some interesting things to do.
It's an interesting book.
Yes.
So thank you very much to them for sending it.
Yeah, story. And our friend Carlene Madigan, she's one of the editors. And so it's kind of weird to know, that there's certain editors, and I don't want to say that some editors we just don't know, but we know Carlene. And so we know it's going to be a good book just from the get-go. She's
a very thorough editor.
She is.
Good one. And very nice person too.
So let me repeat that title. The Backyard Homestead Guide to Growing Organic Food, a crop-by-crop reference for 62 vegetables, fruits, nuts, and herbs by Tanya Deckel-Cobb. We'll have links in the show notes.
Ready for the next quote?
I am.
Okay. The way I see it, if you want the rainbow, you got to put up with the rain, Dolly Parton. Speaking of rain.
What? Did it rain?
No, it did not rain. I don't think that's the kind of rain she's talking about, Carol. We're going to talk about ticks really quickly. All right. So I was on Facebook, saw the Garden Professor's post. That's a great great page to follow or group to follow. It's a very interesting group. And they had links to a new thing in Entomology Today, which I didn't even know there was Entomology Today. It's brought to you by the Entomological Society of America. And so here's the title of the article. Feeding deer corn with tick control drug shows promise in new study. Okay. And it was written by Scott Williams, PhD. And it's ivermectin, interestingly enough. And so what they're doing is where deer feed heavily, because the deer population, which Lone Star ticks love, and I think black-footed ticks do too, they are notorious. We've got more deer than we've ever had because I listened to a tick expert on this seminar I went to, and he said one of the reasons that we have such high numbers of tick-borne diseases for human beings now is because of deer. Because in the 50s, we'd really reduced the numbers of deer, but then hunters wanted to hunt deer, and so they tried to bring them back, which I'm all in favor of hunters hunting deer.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
So they have figured out a way to put it in their corn. I read this a week ago and I've forgotten now. So there was one strategy that was to get them to walk through an area and get it brushed on them. Okay.
Right.
But now they're trying, it's called a poster device. Okay. And so it was and that was permethrin, which is what the the tick repellent clothing is made of. It has permethrin in it. But now they've been trying to do moxidectin. It's a more modern derivative of ivermectin. And so in 2018, people can use it for various things. And now they're talking about using it they're feeding deer with it. So the consensus in the commenting on that page the day I saw it was, oh, well, that'll cause problems. You know what I mean? People were immediately like freaking out because it is a type of, I don't know, I don't know what you call it. What is ivermectin? You know more about it than I do.
I don't know much about ivermectin as to what it is. I know it was discovered in Japan and it's easy to make ivermectin. I do know that. And so I don't think it's been used for a long, long time because
it's been out there for a long time. Lots of people were this is a bad idea. And then I wrote on there, I commented, well, in the case of how much terrible tick-borne disease we have in the United States right now, because I had no idea, but between Lyme, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, the one I have, AGS, and then there's two new ones that Lone Star ticks carry that are so new and so deadly that they don't even want to talk about them. I was like, this might not be a bad idea. And so people were surprised at that.
Yeah, but when you read the article, they're they're feeding deer pesticides. Well, they're feeding them a derivative of ivermectin. They call it cydectin, that's I suppose it's technically a pesticide because it is generally given to cure people of parasites. But it's not like they spray dicamba or something on them, which is a terrible
actually,
herbicide.
It doesn't seem to hurt the deer. They just catch the deer and count the ticks. So obviously it doesn't seem to hurt them much. Could it be a problem in the future? I don't know. But we have a problem right now too. So it's just an interesting article if people want to go read it. I have no opinion on it other than I thought it was interesting.
Yeah. And like it says I think it says in the article, which I was reading while you were talking, they've commonly given cows and horses and stuff are commonly given ivermectin or an ivermectin derivative.
Yeah.
So they're not like, it's not like they're coating them with, I'll give another example, Agent Orange or something like that. So
no, they're not. And also I've heard lots and lots of reports from hunters, or read lots and lots of reports from hunters where they are finding deer just covered in those ticks.
Yeah. So
and nobody wants that for the deer either.
No. So here's what we'd say. Again, kind of like the GMO tomato last week. We're not going to express an opinion on this podcast, pro or con. We're just going to present the information, and you go read the article and you go do the research and figure out for yourself whether you think
make your own decision.
Exactly.
In connection with that, I also read a really interesting article, and I've also heard this from several different doctors and tick specialists, that the Lone Star tick is different from all the other ticks in the United States in that it hunts its prey. And it hunts us because we breathe carbon dioxide like other animals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you sit down in the garden to work or sit in a hunting blind to hunt, it smells you. And it doesn't just wait on a leaf for you to walk by and get attacked. It actually crawls over to find you.
Creepy little things.
I hate them. But the interesting, and they carry not only AGS, but they also carry the homeland disease and the bourbon disease. And no, the bourbon disease is not named after the drink. It's named after Bourbon County, Kentucky. And the homeland disease, I can't remember where it was found, but it was found in the middle of the United States. Those two are both deadly, and while AGS isn't technically deadly, it causes anaphylaxis. So wear that permethrin clothing. I did a whole reel on it. It's not going to hurt you to wear it. And I keep being asked questions about children, and I don't have an answer about that. So I'm actually going to ask some of the experts on some of my Facebook groups, because we have actual experts in there. That's enough about ticks, and I promise not to talk about them next week.
Okay, we're going to hold you to that, and I'm going to do a quote. I have found that most troubles seem less troubling after a bracing cup of tea, and that's Mrs. Potts in Beauty and the Beast.
Do you have a cup of tea today?
I do have a cup of tea today.
What are you having?
I have Choice Organics Mandarin Ginger Herbal Tea. And
I have Celebration, which was for Queen Elizabeth's celebration, her last one, her 75th or something.
75 years on the throne. Yes, that is correct.
Gosh, she was amazing. All right, our rabbit holes. You do yours first, because I talk too much about ticks.
So I posted about Mrs. Edward Harding last week. She was a very difficult lost lady to find because her name, Alice Harding, turns out to be very common. And in Ancestry, they dump in all these British records, I think, to try to entice you to buy the British. You can't go and see anything, but to entice you to buy all that, I'm like, I'm not buying that.
Yeah.
So I finally got through her with enough information. So then I am moving on to CZ Guest, because
my favorite.
Yeah, on The Feud, Capote and the Swans. She is on there.
Capote and the Swans. And she was fascinating all by herself, because I read some stuff about her this week too.
Yes. So
fascinating.
And then also in between all that, I'm starting to explore information because, like I've said before, I think the upcoming solar eclipse on April the 8th, where we will be in darkness for almost a full 4 minutes. in my neck of
Wow.
the woods.
Wow.
I want to read up more about that so that I can enjoy the experience a little bit more. So I got a book. I bought a
Mhm.
book, and we'll see. But that's huge big deal here. They're saying, the state parks and all these, they're actually opening up the Indianapolis 500 Speedway to have some big event if you want to go watch the solar eclipse with a big crowd, and Purdue's doing something, and I'm not sure what all, but this is big time, and it's coming
Yeah,
up quick.
my friend Karen was trying to get me to go down and see it in the prime location in Oklahoma. And I was like, no, I don't care about that stuff. I care, like, it's a joke in my family how little I care about space,
Uh-huh.
stars. I don't care about solar eclipses either. I think it's cool, but I'm not going to go.
Well,
No.
we had a partial solar eclipse in 2017,
Yeah,
kind
we
of a
had
warm
one
up.
not that long ago.
Oh, some of the schools are closing for the day so that the kids aren't, like, what's my memory? We're going to have the solar eclipse at school. They're closing for the day so the kids can go enjoy it with their families. And even my
That's
garden
funny.
club would have met on that day. And I sent a note because I'm their speaker that day. I'm like, I won't be there because it's the solar eclipse. And everybody says, well, I'm not going to be there either. So we're moving our club meeting a day. I mean, it's a big whoop-de-doo here.
Okay, y'all enjoy that.
All
I mean,
right.
I went through them several times. All right, so my rabbit hole. I've been reading. Have you been reading your monthly books?
I have been reading, but not this one. I've been reading other Februaries.
Okay, so in connection with you reading monthly books, I've been reading What We Sow. And it's a good book for reading monthly because those chapters are long. And it's by Jennifer Jewell and it has a much longer title, but I'm not going to read it because we've already talked about it once, but we can link to it if we got in the newsletter. All right. Jennifer is the host of Cultivating Place, a podcast and a radio show. And I told you I was going to join you on the monthly reading of it. It's interesting. January was okay, but February, wow, it is a giant rabbit hole. It's a history of seed company consolidation and all of the outliers who wanted to keep seeds open pollinated and open sourced. And she went and interviewed all of these people, like the guy who started Johnny's Selected Seeds, the people who did Seed Savers Exchange. She went into the land grant universities and how they got connected to Monsanto. Why would petrochemical companies and people who create things like, Monsanto, why would they want to own seed banks? Why did they start buying up all the seed companies in the 70s? And it's very, very interesting. And it's not as political as she's written it as I expected. Does that make sense?
That does make sense.
So she sat down and wrote down. I mean, I don't think Jennifer would be upset for me to say, I mean, she's a friend of ours. She leans to the left and she lives in California. But she tried really hard, I think, in this chapter to just give you the facts for the most part. And the facts just sit there like a big lump of coal. But there's some good news. And so I'm in the good news section, but I had to go to sleep last night because I read it right before bed. This is not an easy book to read. It is complicated, and she spent a lot of time on it. I would like to know how long it took her to write it because she had to interview a ton of people, but she interviews them for the podcast too. So that helps.
Right.
Anyway, very, very good rabbit hole.
All right. Let's move on to garden commissions. So I have to say, weather permitting, and it looks like, it's going to go up again. More weeding out of the winter weeds because, yeah, might try to get the crabapple out front pruned and then see if there's some other shrubs that could use a little bit of rejuvenation pruning. Not too much, but before they break bud. And there's like a couple of viburnums that I'm looking at and saying, yeah, I could probably take out. And they say don't take out more than a third unless you're like clear cutting it like you did your smoke bush. But I'm going to do some of
Yeah,
that
you're really
maybe.
not supposed to do that.
I need to start more microgreens because I've just eaten through the first batch of whatever. So time to start some more. That's it. What about you?
It's cold. But it's supposed to be nice next week. I have 2 garden coaching clients. Yes, garden coaching is open. and I'm getting busy. So if people want me to do it, they need to get on my schedule. I'm going to continue cutting back my roses and working on getting the garden slowly in shape because it is rose pruning time here. And the good news is I feel so much better than I have the last 2 years, and I have so much more energy. Yay. I'm also working on a cut flower garden talk, which is about growing your own cut flowers for the Oklahoma Museum of Art's Art in Bloom, which I'm speaking on April 14th. That's a Sunday at 11 a.m. It's not the best time, but that's when they have me speaking. So I'll go to Mass the night before. And you can buy tickets on February 20th. That's when tickets open. So I'll be talking about that. And I'm kind of excited about it because it's a talk I've never done before.
Cool. Well, let's wrap this thing up. Thank you for listening to The Garden Angelist. I hope you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. We publish every week on Wednesdays at 12 a.m. Eastern Time.
If you listen to Apple Podcasts, we'd love a 5-star review that helps us get noticed by others. Thank you to those who have done so because it's not easy. Could you also share our podcast with your friends? Word of mouth is still the best way to get the word out there.
And be sure and check out our show notes for links for more information about today's topics, plus links to our own websites.
And go ahead and subscribe to our Substack newsletter, The Garden Angelist at substack.com. It's also linked to in our show notes. If you do, you get a link to listen to the podcast a whole day early.
And if you want to help support us, use those affiliate links. If you buy something after clicking through on them, we earn a small commission and it costs you nothing.
Or if you want to, you can set up a monthly subscription through Buzzsprout or make a one-time donation through PayPal. Thank you.
Thank you indeed to everyone who has done so.
It was lovely to chat with all of you over the garden gate. Bye until next week.
Bye, everybody.